here's Brody Brazil.
It's a crazy realization for me to do this video and bring up a topic and a story from about 20 years ago, but also at the very same time understand the demographics here on this YouTube channel that some of you were not even born yet, or you were in diapers when the ESPN phone was a thing for 1 year only, back in 2005 and into 2006. Yeah, ESPN, they launched their own phone back in the day. And kids, this is what phones used to look like. How do you text on that? Oh, trust me, there was a method to it, and I was really good at it. By the way, the idea for this video actually came from somebody on Twitter, Ed DeVoogd. Ed DeV Comedy says, "Hey, Brody, watching your video on the upcoming ESPN platform, do you remember when they tried to launch the ESPN phone? Oh, Ed, they didn't try, they launched it, and it was deemed a failure." But it's interesting because as we look at this now in reverse 20 years ago, there were actually some successes and some backbones built to get this phone off the ground that they would eventually use for apps and the iPhone itself. But this was just a little bit too ahead of its time when it came out. It was also crazy expensive. And if you just want me to stop talking, you can actually see what the phone was all about. Here was a commercial.
That is ESPN. This is mobile ESPN. This isn't just like sports on your current phone, okay? This is a new phone service from ESPN. Just one touch of the E button, man, you get features like the sideline and the fastest alerts and video highlights and ESPN show clips. It's like instant painless access into ESPN.
Switch to mobile ESPN today. Call 1-800-GET-ESPN.
Nice. Now I need a tetanus shot.
Who's calling a phone number to get a phone, by the way? Call 1-800-GET-ESPN. That commercial, so 2005, yeah, when this was an actual thing and this was an actual service. And it kind of lets you know that when you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this phone, this platform, this device, and it only goes from November of 2005 to December of 2006, like that was the start and that's the end. 13 total months. It was definitely a failure from a business sense. But like I said, the idea behind this at the time was just too far ahead of itself. They didn't start their own network. ESPN didn't. Like their own mobile network, I should say. They used Sprint's network. And by the way, this whole thing was not called the ESPN phone officially. That's what all of us called it. It was called ESPN Mobile. That was the name of the service. But everybody said, hey, are you going to get the ESPN phone? Problem is, back then, Nokia and Motorola were kind of the prominent phone manufacturers. And I know this is crazy, right? Like you're thinking, what about Android devices? What about iPhones? They didn't exist yet. There was life before the iPhone. There was life before this thing, right? So my point is that they were only available on Samsung and Sanyo devices, and these phones back then cost $399. Now, thinking what you can get out of an iPhone today, for example, the processing, the screen, the fact that there's multiple cameras, like $399 back then for that little flip phone, that little plastic flip phone, pretty darn expensive. And then there were the plans, right? You also had to have these plans. Now, what do I mean by 100 minutes here? Do a lot of you younger people understand this? Sorry, I feel like an old man now. $34.95 a month, you had 100 minutes of calling. This was before people were wildly texting each other. Like you could send SMS messages back in the day, but not many people actually did that. They called each other when they wanted to communicate. But you only got 100 total minutes. That meant nights and weekends were not free. 100 total minutes a month of talking. 3 minutes a day for $35, that's a pretty expensive plan. Plus, obviously, you were using a lot of data to download that really low-resolution video and scores and all that stuff. But eventually, the plans went up between $65 and $225 per month. Yeah, you can kind of understand why this didn't go well. You could access ESPN's news and video and highlights and scores all with one push of the button, which is something that we think is free and easy today because it is. But back then, this is what it took to get that done 20 years ago. September 2nd, 2006, I do want to give ESPN credit. They did the first live streamed sporting event straight to mobile devices. It was a football game, a college game where Michigan beat Vanderbilt 27-7. So only months before their ultimate demise, and you'd think they probably planned this all spring and all summer, they showed a college football game. They were the first to live stream a sporting event on your mobile device. Now, think about how easy we all do that, like every single day, every other day here in 2025 and beyond. back then, 2006, that was like a miracle that you could actually do that. ESPN heavily promoted their mobile product across their own brands, but they also spent $30 million that Super Bowl, must have been the Super Bowl of '06, for an advertisement, right? Like, that goes to show you they were taking it seriously. They wanted ESPN Mobile to work, that they were going to drop a Super Bowl ad for it. It was basically ESPN.com's coverage, but in a mobile format, right? So it wasn't like it took a bunch of extra work for them to do this. I mean, from a content, it wasn't called content back then. It was called journalism back then. But from a preparation standpoint, it was just reformatting what was on their website and making it mobile friendly. Steve Jobs. Now, you understand he was part of Pixar, Pixar part of Disney, Disney part of ESPN. Steve Jobs had some connection loosely to ESPN, and here's what he said when he was already planning the iPhone and when he heard about this ESPN phone. Your phone, ESPN, is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Like I beep that? Reportedly, he said that to ESPN president George Bodenheimer. Now, was he just being brutally honest? Was he maybe insulted that somebody else was trying to get into the phone space before he could? He knew what he and Apple were already doing, and he was a little bit, protective about that. But I mean, he wasn't wrong in terms of maybe the cost and the price and the service, but the idea, the foundations of this maybe weren't the worst idea because it's kind of what we all do here and now. ESPN Mobile, from a business perspective, this is why it flopped. They had a reported projection for 240,000 subscribers. Their reported actual subscribers in the first year, 10,000. It's well short of 240, 250,000. ESPN and Disney, they lost reportedly $135 million during the 2006 fiscal year on ESPN Mobile alone. And long-term subscribers, right? Like the product went on, I think, to the end of '06, but they started refunding subscribers. If they had paid an ultimate amount early on, if they paid up front, they were all refunded by September of 2006. ESPN didn't waste any time. They didn't try and make this work. They just said it's done. There's not even a lot of high-resolution images out there because this product didn't last long. It was so quick, and it was from a time period of 20 years ago when we didn't have photos of everything, but these are the best images I could find to try and get you an idea of what this was like. And by the way, going back to that texting question, see the letters on the numbers right there? If you wanted to hit a C, you had to hit 2 3 times, A, B, C. So to spell my name, you do 22 to get to B. For the R, you do 37777. O, you do 3 5s, 555. D, 3 once. I, you do 4 3 times, 444. E, you do 3 twice. See how confusing that was? Just to text my own name instead of or speech to text. Very primitive. And this phone, by the way, was very cool. It had a screen on the inside. It also had a screen when you close the clamshell on the outside, too. Ooh. Amazing, right? This is where we were 20 years ago, and ESPN tried it, and then they backed out of it. But despite the idea of failure, like it was a failure from a business perspective, this was just too early for its time. We ultimately wanted sports scores and news and information and streaming things. But the problem is, back then, we just weren't ready for this yet. And the cost, the barrier was way too high. And all of this led to ESPN's mobile app and mobile product here. It led to coding and workflows that would eventually be used in the apps on places like the iPhone, just several years down the road. Again, back then, if you wanted to know the score of a game and you had your phone and you couldn't get on like the mobile internet, you had to go find a computer or listen to the radio or turn on the television. Those were the ways to find out news and information. And so this ESPN phone kind of broke that barrier. It just broke it too early. Yeah, too expensive, too singular. When I say that, like, yeah, you want a smartphone, but do you really want the ESPN branded phone where it kind of puts you in that walled garden and that's it? A little bit too exclusive. But I will say this, as ESPN gets ready to launch their own brand new platform, their own direct-to-consumer platform this fall, it may not be perfect. And it may not stand the test of time either. But you can't stop trying these things, right? You can't be afraid that, oh, we failed in the past, but ultimately something good came out of it. You got to shoot your shot on these things. And I don't blame the ESPN phone for Failing, yeah, we can have our laughs at it now, but I think if it came out 2 years later, like right before the iPhone, if it came out in tandem with the iPhone, it would have been cooked because Apple was going to run laps around this product right here with the screen and just the layout of the phone. But they tried. I don't blame them. Was it a failure? Short term, yes. Long term, I think it did a lot of good. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Thumbs up down there for me, this channel, and this video. And don't forget to also hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you back here next time.